Michael, welcome to this part 3 now of the Centurion Show.
That's awesome.
So if we're not careful, we can go 10 parts.
There's plenty to talk about. Every day is another adventure.
That's exactly right. Well, speaking of, looks like we got a couple new books on the table.
Yeah, we went to the bookstore today. It was called Cheever Books in San Antonio. Man, they got some unbelievable books there. And we got one here, because we love old books. And this one is called The Indian and His Problem by Francis E. Lewip, however you say that. It looks pretty interesting. I saw it in the Indian section. That place that was called Cheever Books has just loaded. She said 100. The lady running it, her name was Marcia, and she said they have 140,000 books. Is that what she said?
Yeah, something like that.
I think we looked at most of them. The Our Wild Indians. This is the title of this one. Colonel Richard Dodge. This is going to be an interesting book. Our Wild Indians, and this one is Apache Gold and Yaqui Silver by Frank Dobie. And it's quite interesting. They're talking about, I looked at this one for a while already today, and just massive amounts of gold and silver that these guys are just loading down the donkeys, practically breaking their backs, loading it out. So as you can imagine, the people coming across, especially at that time, Spaniards, they have a deep thirst for gold and silver, but gold makes people go crazy somehow. Actually, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, well, Michael, tell us a little bit about why you chose those books today, because I know you don't just buy books just to buy. They have, I'm sure, a strategic purpose for you, and so walk us through a little bit why you bought those and the meaning they have for the time we're in right now.
Yeah, that's a good point, because out of 140,000 books there, I came home with 4. The fourth one is where did it go? But anyway,
On your laptop over there.
The Book of Marvels. Anyway, it's a great book, but anyway, that's not really related to research. That's just a cool book. But these books on the Indians, I got these because we're facing a lot of anthropological warfare. We're facing a lot of different obstacles that, for instance, the Chinese are trying to make indigenous people think that they came from Asia, and therefore they are related somehow, and therefore, we should fight back the white man, that sort of thing. Like they're doing that in Honduras and other places. The Kuna Indians down in Panama are now starting to work more closely with the Chinese, that sort of thing. But also, you see La Raza, which is the terrorist organization. A lot of them are here in Texas and also in New Mexico and Arizona and California. That's an organization that it's highly racist, and they in favor of whatever race they think they are. It's actually an interesting that's a rabbit hole in and of itself. But at the end of the day, they want to have their own country, and also there's the Reconquista, right, which overlaps. But in other words, to take Mexico, to take California, and just large parts of the United States, and make it Mexico or their separate country, which of course China and Russia and others would love to see us fighting internally. So I'm studying the La Raza and the Reconquista people. They like to make it sound like this was all, like Texas was all their country. But in fact, it belonged to all these people before, like the Comanches and the Apaches and so many other Indian tribes. I mean, a long list. And then came the Spaniards for centuries. And then came the Mexicans for a brief period, just 20 or 40 years. It was maybe 26. Between different areas were different times, but basically, not more than 50, 60 years, depending on the longest times that Mexico had any of the land. At the end of the day, it was just a brief blip in history. Mexico had part of the land, but of course, Mexico consisted mostly of conquistadores. They're speaking the language, Spanish, of the conquistadors. They're speaking the language of the European conquistadors that they say that they're against, right? So in other words, all these layers of people that were here before, that's what these books are about. I'm looking at the people that were here before and what happened with them before, with the Spanish, and then with Mexicans, and then with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, on this part 3, I would like to touch a little bit on the more spiritual side of the war. I know we've talked a lot about the physical side, but I would like to touch a little bit on the spiritual side. And so I know faith has played a big role in your life. And so how would you say that your spiritual awareness has really played a role in keeping you grounded while navigating really some of the darkest corners of the world during these wars? Because I know you've mentioned several times you don't have any PTSD, and so along with being outside in the sun and staying off the drugs and everything, I'm sure faith has played a big role in that as well.
Yes, not expecting failure from yourself, not expecting to be beaten down by the world around you. That takes internal strength that comes from God above at the end of the day, right? And so when you're ideologically driven, you don't fall for a lot of the normal traps that people fall for because you have a bigger cause. The cause is not yourself. That's why patriots are something that people fear. Because patriots have a higher cause, right? Patriots or people who are at one with themselves and at one with God, they have a higher calling, and so they don't kneel to man, right? As we saw so many senators and representatives just get on their knees to Satan, basically at the end of the day. I mean, they're getting on their knees to LGBTQ and all that other satanic stuff. You know what we talked about before, when we see, for instance, one of the things that is used to upset the West is when some Iranians have called us the Great Satan. We've talked about that before. But at the end of the day, we have become the country that is actually poisoning our whole country with so many things, intoxicants of all sorts, and death jabs, and switching boys to girls, and all this terrible nonsense. And that is great Satan stuff, as we've spoken numerous times before. And so when you have a higher God, then you don't fall for that stuff because you're not blowing with the winds.
Well, I know there's a lot of people that suffer, whatever you call it, with the PTSD, and I can understand where they're coming from. But what would you say to these people who are suffering with PTSD and crippling depression from this and everything? I know you've stated in the past you don't do any drugs at all, and so is that just kind of give us a little step-by-step on how people can break free from that PTSD?
Yeah, first, I mean, as you can imagine, knowing so many veterans, having spent years in the wars and in the military and that sort of thing, I know, and actually most people in America that have PTSD have it from things like child abuse when they were children or car accidents, that sort of thing. They have it from other things, getting robbed on the street or sexually abused or whatever. So it's not like it's all combat related. It's just not. But inevitably, when I talk with people who say they suffer from PTSD, and you start to ask them about basically, do you drink? That's almost always yes, or pills, or some kind of drugs. It's always like, I'm trying to cure it with these drugs. Right, this is what helps me with my PTSD is staying high all the time. You know what I mean? Yeah, how many times I've heard that? It's like I don't know how many. It's just endless. So in other words, the ones that are self-prescribing or being prescribed drugs just perpetually are suffering with PTSD. Yet somebody like me who's done tremendous amounts of actual combat with people being killed around me many, many times, and I don't have any PTSD. Despite all the sadness and horrors and all that, you have to absorb it, you have to be a man, and you have to move forward. We don't have time to lay around and cry about it. We have to come back and lead in the United States, right? Or wherever you are. And that's our job. That's our mission. We have a higher calling. Our calling is not in our own little feelings. Poor little me, right? I mean, look at the songs we listen to today. All the poor little me sad songs, right, that play constantly on the radios. If that music doesn't make you want to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, nothing will, I mean, it's like, how many songs on the radio do we hear that has something to do with let's be bad, let's go do drugs, let's get drunk, let's go, just be a bad person. I mean, seriously, we should try tomorrow just to pick like 20 random songs on the radio and write down what we get, what feelings those either make us feel or are designed to make us feel.
I read a poem earlier today, and it was by D.H. Lawrence, I believe, and it's on self-pity, and it goes, "I've never seen an animal feel pity for itself, and a small bird will freeze flying out of the sky before it feels pity for itself."
Was that T.E. Lawrence?
D.H.
Or
I'm pretty
D.H.
sure.
Lawrence? Oh, I love that. How'd that go again?
I've never seen an animal feel pity for itself. A small bird would rather freeze out of the sky than feel pity for itself.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Like, don't feel pity for yourself. Self-pity, that's like, again, that's a drug. It's a terrible death drug.
Don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's most important to talk about after, like, you have a situation and you talk about how to recover from PTSD and stuff like that. But before, like, if you know you're going to go into something, or even if you don't, how can you prepare your heart and soul to be able to take that in and just not let it affect you on, like, an emotional level that will hold you back from your true purpose?
If you read my dispatch from Iraq before we went into a significant battle, I think the name of the dispatch was "Be Not Afraid," which, as you know, is right from the Bible, right? Do you remember? Do you have a Bible here? I'd like to read that. "Be not afraid." I mean, it's a perfect. I wish we would. I didn't even think about that because I didn't know we were going to talk about it. But "Be not afraid." I actually published that, and.
Well, yeah, I think the Bible said 365 times it says "fear not," and so that's one for each day.
Yeah.
It tells you to fear not.
Yeah,
so
something along the lines of fear not. So do not be afraid. Or
So you have to tell yourself, I will not be afraid, or if I am, I'll still be a leader. You have to tell yourself, don't ask yourself, will I freeze? Tell yourself, I will be a leader. You're telling yourself, I will be a leader. I am a soldier, and I will do my job, right? So, again, when we saw this stuff in Israel, when people said, it took 7 or 8 hours to respond to the attacks on October 7th, which we've talked about numerous times. And when I've said they should have been in combat within 20 or 30 minutes, people say, no, they needed to make a plan because in fact, that's ridiculous. A real soldier, a real combat soldier, here's my plan. Where's the gunshots? Let's go, boys. That's your plan. We're going to move to contact. That's called a movement to contact. You hear the fighting going on. Hopefully you got a radio to talk with other guys, and you move to it. You get in there and you mix it up, right? Because they're killing your people, right? You think I'm going to sit back and, wait around and watch them kill all of my friends? We're going, bud. Going. We're going to where the shooting is, and we're going to start laying lead.
So you're saying we're basically in both a spiritual and a physical battle against the enemy. What are some examples of how you can see that we're in a spiritual battle and not just a physical battle?
Oh, look at what the answer to that, because we talk all the time, but I'm glad that you answered
for
it.
the audience.
So I can hit the tennis ball.
That's right.
I mean, we look around us like pushing drugs on children, doper Joe Rogan smoking dope in front of tens of millions of young people and pretending that's your freedom. President Grant talked about in about 1879, he was talking with a Chinese leader, and he talked about how the drug addiction, this is 1879, he was talking about how the drug addiction is up there with slavery, basically. That's not verbatim, but he's basically saying basically equivalent to slavery is drug addiction. And they will use these intoxicants as weapons to fight you. And this is what's happening. So with these intoxicants, we reduce people's intellect. We reduce their ability to resist, or even that they know that they even should resist. And the next thing you know, they're basically swinging off a pole in some strip club or something, or getting a sex change, or that sort of stuff, right? I mean, just totally going down the wrong path. And it can be, at many times, it's a path from which they never recover. They simply die going down that road. I mean, how many, every day as we're speaking, some young person is dying right now as we're speaking with drugs in them right now. By the time we finish this talk, somebody will have died because they either had a car accident because they were on drugs or alcohol or whatever. Let's just group alcohol and drugs as the same, intoxicants, right? Or they just died, they got stupid and jumped off a bridge, or just overdosed or whatever. It's reducing our entire country. One drug addict, if we five were one family and one of us, just one of us, was on drugs or heavy alcohol, all of us would suffer from it. It reduces all of us. So we have to not just give somebody a pass. You know, just because Uncle Jim was off in the war, he's not allowed to be a drunk. You know what I mean? Okay, Uncle Jim went off in the war. Great. That's good. It's very important. Thank you very much. And that does not give you a sudden pass to be a drunk, right? People have to not give them a pass, just be like the veteran card. Well, you know, I'm a veteran. I don't want to hear that crap. Get out of here. You know, if I were a judge in a courtroom and somebody came into me and they had robbed a bank and they tried to throw the veteran card, I'd be like, thank you for your service, and that'll be 10 years, right? Seriously. Going to combat doesn't make you into bank robber. Being a bank robber makes you a bank robber. And if you were on drugs, that's not going to be an excuse. That's you on drugs doing a bank robbery, and now you're going to jail, right? If everybody knows, even the drug addicts, that if you jump off of a bridge, you're going to hit something, right? But they think they can get a pass from people by throwing the sympathy card, and they get the pass, and then we feed into it. We just feed into it. You got a free pass to be a worthless scumbag who robs people's homes, right? And who goes and does every sort of crime, doesn't produce anything for society. And when you talk about it like that, because that's the way it is, stop giving any sort of pass. No sympathy. Be like Major Payne. If you want to find sympathy, you can find it in the dictionary between certain words.
Yeah, so back to the family part of that. Some people won't be able to avoid like the people they're around who are on intoxicants. So like, what would be your advice to someone who already has their mind set straight, but their family is still on drugs or intoxicants? Like, how can they help them? Because obviously as Christians, like, you need to plant seeds of life in them. Like, it's not my job to judge, but how can I change them and plant life into them?
That can be difficult. My father drank too much, and that's one of the reasons I hate it so much, right? Every one of us, everybody watching this, we've all known drugs and drunks, all of us. I don't know any exception whatsoever, right? And so everybody has lived through this, so we've all had our own experience sets. And I'm not sure that my knowledge or wisdom would be any greater than anyone else's. But my father drank too much. Eventually, I went and lived with my grandparents. But not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody is able to do that. I was extremely lucky that I had great grandparents, but some people don't, and I get it. And that can be difficult to work your way through, but you can work your way through it. But I can tell you one thing: the people that are going through these very difficult challenges, and there'll be people watching this who are, if they make it through, and they can make it through, they will be stronger than people that didn't do this. You can make it through, and you must make it through. Do it with the help of God. And when you get to the other side, you're going to know things that people who haven't suffered don't know. And that can be extremely helpful in many parts of your life for the rest of your life, right? The things that you're learning now, unfortunate things that you're learning, they are literally the school of hard knocks. So eventually, as you're old enough or able enough, you just get away from it. And you'll have to use your own free will to get away from it. And we all have free will. You know, we all have. One of the things I did, well, I wanted to go to the Army anyway, but I went to the Army. And then, you know, by the time I got out of the Army, I was definitely on my feet, right? So, I mean, there's ways to, I hate to use the word transition anymore, but there's ways to transition out of those problems, which I did. And, you know, went off to the Army and did Army things and learned so much, made great friends that are still friends. So yeah, you just have to get through it. You'll have to work your own path because everybody's path is different than others. But everybody can do it.
You're talking can do it, like get out of the situation with those others being around, or are you saying get through it, like get through their addiction to the intoxicants?
You mean somebody who is addicted?
Someone who is not,
Or somebody who's not addicted?
but their family is.
That's where it can be difficult because if you're like 10 years old, which I was, I don't really have the way to I used to think about going and living in a tree and things like that, seriously. And, like storing a frying pan and stuff and getting ready to go, And so, like because I'd read a book where a kid was living in a tree.
Tree house?
Not in a tree house, but it was just a huge tree. Anyway, I was very young, you know what I mean? It's an undeveloped idea, as you can imagine. But the idea was to actually get away. And, but at that age, you don't really have the capacity that you have as these years go by. I mean, by the time I was 16, that's a different story. I did move in with my grandparents. My brother moved in with another family, right? And so, we found ways, but again, not everybody has a parachute that they can jump into. And if not, that they're going to have to work their own way through it. And that is the school of hard knocks. If you go to church, there will be somebody there that will help you. I mean, go think about, like, if you're watching this and you're like feeling hopeless, go to a nearby church and think about that. I mean, because there are people out there that won't let this happen. But you're going to have to use your own imagination with your own. You're not trapped. You're not in a dungeon. You're not in a basement. If you're in a basement or in a dungeon, you're probably not watching this. But that means if you're watching this, that means you probably have the ability to actually open the door and walk out. And so you need to think about how to self-rescue.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone the other day talking about walking out and when to walk out. And I kind of told them my view on when I see something bad, do I have a chance to minister right here, or do I just need to remove myself? So what is I don't know if you have a line, but what is your advice when you see someone who is on intoxicants, but can I help this person, or do I need to get out right now?
Right. I mean, that's one of the most important questions I've heard in a long time. I have helped quite a few people actually, and but mostly you don't help, because we see people on the side of the road every day and we don't stop and help. Right. I mean, you walk through Skid Row or that sort of thing, and you're just like, wow, this is like a volcanic eruption of pain. Right. But the people that I have helped, usually there's been some sort of natural entree. We already have some reason why we're in contact with each other, right? And so that gives you're in a position to actually do it, right? And so in that regard, I've helped quite a few people, and it's not difficult especially when you stop. Like the first thing I do is I don't want to hear about all the reasons why you're in this. You're already in it. And to be honest with you, I don't care. You want me to tell you about every firefight I was in? Probably not. It gets pretty boring, right? Except unless you were in it, But do you, I don't want to say it and you don't want to hear it. What we need to do is get you out of it. And how to get you out of it, if you're the one that's actually doing the drugs or whatever, is stop with the bad music for starters. That's easy. I would just stop any music. When in doubt, just stop it, right? I mean, go. And another thing is to all intoxicants, finished, everything, right? Sunshine, get it. But when do you walk out and when do you minister is the question. And that's a hard question. But I've done it many, many times. But it is always opportunistic. For instance, I know somebody and I'm with them all the time, so I have the opportunity to do something. I don't go off to, Portland and try to rescue somebody off the street. Other people do things like that, but I never have.
Yes.
Why do you believe intoxicants are more prevalent right now as opposed to 50 years ago?
Oh, just
Like spirits, or
keep in mind, 50 years ago they were pretty prevalent too. But it's part of a larger war. It's part of a larger war, and that's really clear. Like Russians and Chinese and Americans, whether it's MK Ultra or whatever, a primary weapon. If you look at 1965, Paul Harvey, we talked about last time, in his 1960, you should play this for people during your episode if possible, the 1965 audio of Paul Harvey saying, "If I were the devil." I mean, he starts off with intoxicants. Basically, if I were the devil, you'd be on drugs, right? And they would somehow get you to do it. And so this has been going on for a long, long time. In fact, in one of the Indian books that I bought, or I think it was one that I bought a couple days ago actually online, I was reading, they were talking about how this was in the 1700s, how the Indians, when nobody had come around them yet, were very civilized in the United States, or America, not United States yet. And until they come and they brought the intoxicants, which is very interesting because I found another book over in Taiwan, and it was from 1892, I think, by a guy named it was from a Canadian. He was a Canadian missionary. He was a dentist, and he'd gone to Canada to be a missionary in Formosa, now called Taiwan. And he talked about how nice the Indians were, the indigenous people, except when the wily Chinese traders brought intoxicants. And then they just went hog wild, mad, went crazy. I see the same down the Darien Gap when I'm down there. Now that these invasion has come through the Darien Gap with so-called migrants, suddenly the Indians down there, like Imbara and Kuna Indians, they have a lot of money that they're not used to having. So 4 or 5 years ago when I would go into their villages, I didn't see beer cans and things like that all over the place. Now I see like stacks of beer cans, whiskey bottles. You can smell marijuana sometimes. And I know the chief of 28 of the villages, and he's told me and I know a lot of the people in the villages because I go out to their villages all the time. And I'm not going out there as a missionary at all, but they tell me that they never had a problem before with men beating their wives and stuff. Never had any problem with anything like that. There were at least 2 or 3. I forgot about this until we're bringing it up now. Imbara, who actually committed suicide recently, and they think it was drugs related or alcohol related.
Wow.
Hanged themselves.
The Indians.
Yep.
Wow.
And I said, wow, have you ever had suicide here before? And they just never had it before. And, but now, because they have so much money, and there is clear anthropological warfare going on against them because they live on very valuable land. And so, again, it's that pork chop. If you have valuable land, and you're going up against people that know how to do this type of warfare, they know how to introduce drugs into your people, how to introduce, like, even 4 or 5 years ago, the music seemed different that many of the Imbara were listening to. It was more kind of fun music. And now I hear a lot of, like, gangster rap music, and some of the young guys are getting tattoos, doing the hat sideways and all that crap. And they get out there and they get into shootouts in the jungle with the Center Front, which is the border patrol I go out with sometimes. They get killed too. They get in straight up firefights out in the jungle, and it's Imbara Indians. Imbara in particular, from some of the villages I go in, some of their young men are out there getting in firefights and getting killed. Like I've been in the villages when they just had a firefight, and it turns out it was people from that village. And you'll go to these villages and you'll see. But suddenly they've gone from living nice out in the you'll see the kids, the Imbara and the Kuna kids and the Wunan children, they're very happy. They're super happy, right? They're always like rolling in the mud and swimming and climbing in the trees and stuff. They want to show you how high they can climb in these really high trees. It's really like way up there. And they jump in the rivers and they're having a lot of fun. But now all of a sudden these drugs are there. I don't know what their future is going to be.
Well, seeing all of this warfare, both physical on the ground and mental and spiritual, what gives you hope and what keeps you anchored to a higher moral vision? Like really, what gives you hope in all of this chaos?
Luckily, I grew up with good grandparents, and I went to First Church of the Nazarene when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I think that instilled the right base. You know what I mean? So like that's my base sort of firmware. It's like it's deep inside of me. It's not something that changes with the wind. It's always just there. And so it's kind of baked into the cake, that's just the way I am because of the people I grew up with. So I'm very lucky.
All right, so what role has faith or spiritual awareness played in keeping you grounded in God through all these dark corners of the earth?
Just, it's now deep inside of me. You know what I mean? So it's like it's not something I have to wrestle with. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel tempted to run off and suddenly take money to smoke dope in front of young people. You could put, 500 kilos of gold on this table, which would probably make it break, and I still wouldn't take it. I'd be like, wow, that's a lot of gold, and no, just no, because it's there now. It's part of me now.
So being grounded in that, moral compass, being grounded in Christ is what keeps you, moral. It keeps you to a higher standard. Because we're seeing that there's a lack of God in the government and in schools, in most aspects, even the churches. They're taking God out, and so I think we're seeing the degeneration of society because of that.
I told you about that preacher I had dinner with in Las Vegas, right?
The Canadian one?
Yeah, that's right, Canadian. And he told me that during the lockdowns, the government was sort of giving them a silver or lead proposition, the Canadian government, that you can either take, I think he said like $30,000, to basically preach the sermons that we provide, or we'll come and cause you problems, like shut you down, or worse, right? We were having dinner together. I was with Dan Vanderseel. He was telling us both that. Very interesting and very concerning, to put it mildly, because he said a lot of them took it.
So yeah, $30,000 or your soul. That's was the
the
wager.
price of your soul.
Wow.
That's cheap.
Yeah.
He's like, we couldn't keep the churches open if we didn't take it. And I'm like, well, why would you keep the churches open to spread poison? Then it's better to close the church, and you can just minister door to door.
That's right.
You know what I mean? That's the way to do it. You just have to go guerrilla, the way they do it in China, right? Otherwise, you're making it one-stop shopping for brainwashing. You got to think, okay, church is closed. So what? What's the difference if the church is closed? Go door to door.
Church isn't a building.
Yeah,
It's just
people.
a building. Yeah. Just go door to door. Just go, and that's it. You don't need the church. They need the church for their business, maybe, and that's clearly what it was. That's clearly what it is. If they're accepting money just to keep the door open, then they're a business. Mm-hmm. They're a restaurant. That's all they are. They're just a whatever.
We saw this a lot during COVID, just churches shutting down because of social distancing and whatever. Why are these governments and foreign agencies trying to shut down God so much?
Well, because they know people that are ideologically driven are hard. It's hard to get them to kneel, to the beast, right? You saw, again, people like Pelosi and these other politicians taking the knee, the photos of them, they were clearly taking a knee to their boss. This was a clear sign that they're totally captured. It doesn't mean we're captured. It means a small group of people are so weak, and that's why they're in those positions, right? But when you read that book, Rape of the Mind, you're going to see why they closed the churches. You're going to see why the intoxicants are so important, page after page. Intoxicants. You got to keep them out of the churches. You got to keep them out of the temples. You got to keep them away from any spiritual grounding. And we're going to get you drunk or high on some kind of intoxicants and push you off the spiritual bicycle, put you off balance, and now they got you, right? And so that's why, again, so what if they close the churches? We can just meet together. It doesn't matter. Go over the fence and people can meet each other. And so that's what you have to do. You got to go guerrilla. And a lot of people in China, that's how they do it, because the churches are obviously all captured, right? Not just the churches, but the temples as well, like the Buddhist temples and that sort of thing. Same thing. It's not just Christianity. They do the same to everybody. They do the same to Islam, too. They do the same thing. That's why they have so many fights with the Uyghur people and others, because, they're not going to take a kneel for them either.
Well, and I would say all these attacks from the governments and I guess other people too, the NGOs and everything. They're all attacks from the devil. The devil is leading the leaders of these organizations and governments to attack Christians and other strong-minded people.
Oh, yeah, they are. Because we're the ones that they fear. We're the ones, again, that don't fall for their stuff. And, you know, the NGOs down in Panama now, the government's getting worried because the NGOs, they're starting to see that the NGOs want to destroy Panama. As I've warned and warned and warned them for 4 or 5 years now. And now they're starting to wake up to it just in the last few weeks, that the NGOs actually are trying to rip apart Panama. And they actually are trying to get everybody to fight everybody. Because, Panama is very complex. It's got Muslims and Christians and LDS and just a lot. Jews, of course, and Chinese. And they're getting everybody to fight in 7 different tribes to both fight each other internally but cooperate against the government. It's interesting.
Well, there's a song that comes to mind. It's called "Strong Man," and it's one of the good sides of the song spectrum. And in that song, it talks about how the devil is trying to corrupt the strong man, and in order for the devil to accomplish his work, he needs to take down the strong man and devour them, because when strong men are present in communities, nations, then those nations will thrive. We saw that through all the rise and fall of many empires. But whenever strong men, masculine men, are removed from those societies and more feminine men or weaker men take their place, then that's when the devil can capture their mind and do what he wants to them and cripple the nation and topple empires. And that's what we've seen the last several thousand years.
You saw that book that we found today in the antique bookstore, right? That talked about the tree-dwelling Indians.
Yeah.
And it was saying, like, how do they keep their men strong? Why do they prefer brave men? This is like old stuff from centuries ago. But yeah, that's why people like Doper Joe Rogan, big MMA guy, super fit, big arms, tough guy. And so he gets all these ultimate tough guy, ultimate fighter things on. This is so he draws the guys that want to be in, the men that you would want to fight you. But keep in mind, a lot of these guys are still young. They're like 14 years old, 15 years old, 16 years old. They're watching Joe Rogan. They're like, hey, this guy is super wealthy. He gets to meet with all the cool people. He's extremely tough, and he smokes dope and drinks alcohol. And there you go. Bingo. Got you. See, he is actually an agent for the enemy. The enemy being Satanist and China and others. He's literally an enemy in the name. He's carrying Satan's sword there. I mean, he's like, look what he's doing. I mean, literally, he's the perfect guy. That's why I go against him so much, right? And people are like, oh, you should just go on Joe. Why would I go on a show with actual Satan's little brother? You know what I mean? I mean, he even looks like him. Look at him. I mean, seriously, the guy gets on there, gets drunk, openly, so gone, he's slurring his words, smoking dope. That is exactly what you're talking about, weakening our strong men. And they're attacking the young guys who are, they haven't fully formed their personality yet. It takes time, right? Like at your age now, you still haven't quite fully formed your personality. As I'm sure you're cognizant of that as well. And then as time goes on, you're clearly growing into strong men. And as it goes, as you grow up, you'll become more, though your thoughts will be more, let's say, not rigid but stronger, right? And but when you've got somebody like Joe Rogan now and smoke dope, it's like total dropping napalm on people's brains.
Well, and I think, unfortunately, I mean, Joe Rogan may or may not know that he's doing this intentionally and he's an agent or whatever you want to call him. But there's, I think, a lot of these people who are unintentionally influencing a lot of people to do this. I mean, just you see a lot of influencers. I mean, I'm sure they're not agents or whatever. I mean, they are, but they're unknowing. They don't know that they're part of that whole plan to take down societies and really countries. And when you have all of these people, all of these influencers doing that, even though they don't know what they're doing is harmful, it still has the same effect.
I can't read their minds. So, I don't know. But it's what I have seen is a lot of people like Scott Adams, openly a doper. Now he's dying. He's got cancer. He was openly pushing the jab and that sort of thing, very serious about pushing the jab. And now he'll probably be dead soon. He made some obvious mistakes. And it's a big boy world. And at the time, when everybody was saying, don't do it, he's saying, I'm the biggest, smartest guy in the room. And a lot of us were saying, if you get killed from this, you're not going to get any sympathy at all. We're men. We're men. I told you not to walk in that minefield. Boom, you're dead. I told you not to do it, right? And now you're dead. And so it's not like we're going to stop and weep over you. That'll be between you and your family, right? And so these guys that are pushing it in bulk, these drugs, I mean, he would get high and he would talk about, I'm going to throw my printer out the window like he's a 4-year-old, right? And, that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, there is a huge group of people doing this. Like one guy has a show, and every time he talks about a certain area of the world, they drink alcohol. Every time they say, some such and such, they have to swill some whiskey or something. And it's supposed to be a serious show, and then that little thing gets popped in there. And all they have to do is that one little thing, and then I'm starting to go, what's the rest of this show all about? Is the rest of this serious show just to draw that other crowd in here? Because there's all these different audiences that our enemies are trying to meet, or they're trying to reach, right? Whether it's artists, whether it's artists who are musicians or whatever, or athletes, the Joe Rogan side, all these different audiences, and the enemy wants to get them all doing the drugs, right? And so that's the way it looks to me. Like I see these lawyers that come on and, just drinking whiskey all the time like children. You know what I mean? It's like, why do you have to just drink whiskey on your show to make it cool? You're not cool. You're like a child. And it makes me extremely suspicious that they're part of an architecture of destruction, knowing or unknowing. But one thing's for sure, they're doing it. And when they do it, they look like either an agent or an idiot, or possibly both.
Along with intoxicants, what do you think is the biggest danger to the world, like in this day and age right now?
Besides nuclear combat, would be just continue to go the direction we're going now. Because we have allowed people to take positions of power through the people that can't be trusted, basically with a skateboard, have aircraft carriers, right? And so that's the kind of situation that we're dealing with now, where people that either don't understand how the economy works, which is quite complex, that I'm not sure anybody deeply understands it's in all of its minutia, but people who are just wrecking our economy, whether it's just through complete robbery and a desire for destruction or what. But there's so many different sets of issues that have been allowed to fester because men don't stand up on little fights even. Like little fights like calling the invaders instead of calling them irregular migrants. See, that's a move of cowardice right there. Not even able to call it what it is. I'm not asking you to go to the border and fight. I'm saying at least start by calling it what it is, right? And so we have people that are unwilling to call the death jabs what they are, even as they're about to roll out others in a large way. So that part's not over. Misako Ganaha in Japan, she's working very closely with this stuff. They're rolling out more death jabs. And undoubtedly, a lot of people will take them while they keep calling them experimental vaccines. So what's the worst, the biggest danger we have is really cowardice.
Well, and going to the jabs, Maha, the Senate, RFK, his whole platform was making America healthy, and part of that is not just the food dyes and not just the corn syrup. That's important, but that's probably 5, 6, or even 7 down the list. The first thing is these jabs. There are thousands of kids that are getting literally shot, every day by these, and probably sterilized every day by these shots. And I mean, every day that goes by is another several thousand kids that get shot, and Maha isn't doing anything about it. They're focused on side crap, and so I've heard this saying a lot, but Maha is haha. It's a joke. I mean, and that kind of goes along with everything that they're saying. It's just
More than
theater.
It's worse than a joke. It's actually an enemy formation. I mean, because they are distracting people with the red dye or whatever. And like you said, I mean, I'm sure that's important, but you can take care of that without even bringing it up. You can fix that, and we took care of the red dye. That's the way that should be. It should be like, we've taken care of so many things that there's no need to go over the list. It's so big you wouldn't remember it anyway. And taking out the big ones, the jabs and those sorts of things. He's not going to do it. RFK is not a courageous man. You saw him there at on the jet there with Elon the Doper Musk, who published his dope test the other day, his alleged dope test, which was all negative. Did you see it?
Yes.
I think I sent it to the group. And they're sitting there like the Maha guys eating McDonald's with him, right? So, I mean, the things that he's always talked bad about for years, and he's just doing it. Like, he's like, I'm your dummy. You know, I mean, seriously, they're proving that he's owned. That they got Donald Trump serving out of the McDonald's window. That's what's called a dog king. You know what a dog king is? A dog king is an old information war strategy, and even anyway, it can be a tactic or it can be taken to the level of strategy. But a dog king is a person. Well, let's just say in the old days, one king wipes out or kills or runs off another king, and then he makes a dog a king of that kingdom that he just conquered, right? And he gives it a crown and a throne and all this stuff, right? So now that's called a dog king. He has servants. And the dog king says you have to work longer in the field today or whatever. It's actually a dog, right? And people are like, well, the king's a dog. I mean, you know, you say, yeah, but that's your king. Yeah, but it's a dog. It's the king. Do what you're told, right? That obviously demoralizes the people who are subject to the dog king, and it emboldens your enemies. Trudeau is a dog king. Rutte in Netherlands, dog king. Zelensky, dog king. Netanyahu, or as a lot of Jews call him, Satanyahu, is a dog king. Satanyahu, as many Jews call him, is actually he's basically Israel's Zelensky, right? Yeah. I mean, there are people that would literally put him in prison or even give him the death penalty for some of the things he's done to Israel. And I'm talking about Jewish people. You can see them starting to rise up on the streets in Israel about him right now, as they've done in the past. But that's a dog king. So the dog king strategy is very effective. And you see that has happened around the United States, right? With whether it's the Fetterman, who is basically, you know, I don't know what his deal is, or, you know, the bartender, you know, who's...
AOC?
Yeah. What's that?
AOC?
Yeah, the bartender. Yeah, AOC, or the Somali thing. All these, all these things are because they're clearly not qualified to be in a job like that. Clearly not even close, right? But once they get installed, they say, well, that's your senator. Well, that's your whatever. And people are like, well, that's them. Let them vote on what we do with our economy when they can't even balance a checkbook, right? I mean, we're talking about people that don't have the training or the intelligence or the characteristics that are required to run a deli, and now they're like the mayor of a major city in the United States, like a crack addict was the mayor of Washington, D.C. You may remember Marion Barry. He was literally a crack addict, and everybody knew he was a crack addict. He was a crack addict while he was actually the mayor. Everybody knew it, and yet he was the mayor.
Oh yeah, well no, I think a lot of these people are caught in the trap of like it's either one or the other. It's either Trump or Kamala. It's either this Republican or this Democrat. And I think that's kind of the wrong way of thinking. It's not just the red pill or the blue pill. I think that's the wrong way of thinking. What would you say about that?
Definitely, the red pill or blue pill is a false choice, and there's a lot of other pills. Like let's say, look at the gubernatorial election in Texas, where it was between Abbott and Beto, and that and I kept pointing out time after every day for a long time, Abbott is World Economic Forum. And people would say, who do you want? Beto? That's the supplied answer in the information war. And a lot of people with applied pressure did start to see through it, right? And but not a sufficient number, obviously. And nobody in their right mind, of course, is going to vote for Beto. But at the same time, Abbott was who they were trying to get in. When I say they, I mean our enemies wanted to get Abbott in. So they got Abbott in, and Abbott is in now. And but it was a false choice. Alan West was also running, and Huffines was also running. So, but you're going, who do you want, Beto? And they're like, there's these other people running too, right? And you know, and I asked Alan West, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, are you going to run again? And he said no. He's tired of it, and he's going to do something else. And so we have to get serious people that are going to do serious things and are not going to compromise, right? I think we all have somebody in mind. But, you know, at this point, this is the same strategy I see around the world, whether it's Canada, Netherlands. There was this one party called the BBB, I mentioned to you before, the Boerenburgerbeweging, which is the farmers' people's movement. Sorry to the Dutch if I didn't pronounce it right. Ich spreche Deutsch, English. I speak German, but I don't speak Dutch. But it's similar, Boerenburgerbeweging, right? The people's farmers' people's movement. But their sign, you know, BBB, Boerenburgerbeweging, and then Bewegung, and their signs were green, BB better, BB better, all over Netherlands. I drove all over Netherlands looking at these signs from north to south and east to west. And I must have driven hundreds of miles around that little country because, you know, I was driving north, south, east, west, all seeing all these farmers and politicians and whatnot. And those BB better signs were everywhere. And it's just immediately, if you know what you're looking at and you do information war a lot, you realize BB better is actually the enemy. But all the conservatives were like, in Netherlands, were like, no, we have to stick with BB better. It's our best choice. It's either them or them. And there were all these other parties, right? And, you know, the lady in charge, her name was Caroline Vanderplas. And one of the farmer leaders, he told me, he goes, Michael, you don't understand. I've met Caroline. She's a great person. There's not a bad bone in her body type stuff like that, right? And then she got elected, or the BBB got more, let's say, more seats than a lot of power. And they did exactly what I and Ava Vlardinger-Brook were warning about. Ava Vlardinger-Brook and I were on with Jordan Peterson together. And both of us were like, BBB is a clear Trojan horse, just like Abbott was, just like Trump and Biden and Harris and Clinton. The whole list, all those ones that are up front and center, those are not the one you want to vote for, right? I mean, those are the clearly, and they're radiating these signs. They're like, you have to explain away like 10 layers of obvious problems before you even get to something that's arguable, right? And so now we see MAGA splitting apart. I saw Steve Bannon somebody sent something to me about an hour ago, where Steve Bannon now, he's very upset about a lot of the Jews, because Steve, of course, is Zionist. And I mean, he's told me that. So, I mean, so Steve is very upset with a lot of the Jews in the United States who are very wealthy, who are going against Netanyahu and against the attacks on Iran. Because it's not like all the Jews are a monolith any more than all the Christians are, any more than all the Catholics or Muslims are. It's simply not. We have this tendency to go, okay, these are the Muslims. This is how Muslims think. Here's the Buddhists. That's how Buddhists think. Christians think like this. And you all know this is simply untrue. Yeah, and it's the same with the Jews. The Jews got so many ways. Some are just as conservative as anybody like us, and we would be more comfortable with them than we would be with certain types of Christians. And then there's other Jews that are going full bore. Let's go to nuclear combat with, toe to toe with Iran, right? And so Bannon is upset with those today. Apparently, I saw the video. And anyway, at the end of the day, we have agency over ourselves, and we can affect the things that are around us, which with these microphones can be a lot of things. So we have to be very responsible about what we do and what we say and what we don't say, because it takes just as much courage to say something or to be silent sometimes. Sometimes it can be difficult to know when to speak and be quiet.
Well, how do we, the average listener, and us too, how do we break that two-cycle thinking of it's either this or this? How do we just not accept it, or how do we go about not accepting those situations and those people? How do we break that mindset?
Yeah, that discernment just takes a lot of daily, basically getting better at it every day, right? And every day getting a little bit better. Always forensically go through your errors. You can just do it privately. You don't have to talk it out loud or embarrass yourself because you're going to make mistakes, right? Everybody does. And there you go, rape of the mind. And also practice, learn when is a time to speak and when is a time to be quiet. And if there's any question in your mind, do I know what I'm talking about? It's probably time to be quiet, right? So if you're like, I'm not really sure about that, okay, I'm going to lock to the safe mode here.
So you're saying that picking the lesser of two evils is absolutely cowardly. So do you think that this same cowardice is what's causing all the foreign wars?
Not all, but certainly it's contributing. It's huge. It's huge. I mean, it is. The lesser of two infinities is still infinity, right? The lesser of two evils, right? They're both evil. You got to find another path. At least don't support that one that's evil. At a minimum, don't support the one that pushed the jab. If they both pushed the jab, don't support either one. If you didn't support either one, like neither Trump nor the Harris thing, nobody would vote for her. Would she vote for herself? I wonder if she would vote for. I don't know if she could find the voting poll. Actually, the question is maybe she's just very smart and she's a great actress playing stupid. I don't know, but could actually be that, right? I don't know because it takes a high level of intelligence to play that stupid, and but that's not the point. The point is if we know that all of those are wrong, why would you always choose the lesser of the evils? It's like I'm choosing that I'm going to jump out of the 100th floor window instead of the 99th. How about just take the elevator and go down? You know what I mean? It's like, there's other ways to do these things, right? There's other ways. There were many other ways to treat the gubernatorial election in Texas than to go for Beto or Abbott. There was, other people running. And likewise with the presidential election, there were other people running. And at this point, who were they? Do we even remember? Because the whole focus was on Harris versus Trump.
Well, RFK was, and then he blended into to Trump.
And RFK is obviously, the book that he wrote, the real Anthony Fauci, I read it, and I thought it was an excellent book. But now, as I look at it in retrospect, what it probably was just a setup so that he could, get a certain vote, us. Because when you read that, you're like, hey, that guy definitely gets it. He's ready to fight. He's on our side. That's the way it felt when I finished reading the book. And then we get to his real actions, and it's like, nope, he's just another dog. He's actually a poodle, and he's humping somebody's leg.
Yeah, so as we've talked about a lot of hard truths tonight and a lot of bad stuff, it can be pretty overwhelming for some of our viewers. So what would you say to someone who's trying to live a life of purpose and conviction, but often feels overwhelmed by the state of the world?
Don't be overwhelmed. Look, all of our families have been through a lot of war and a lot of famine and a lot of pandemic. We are the children of survivors. We got it in us. Look at the Bible. It's a survival book. Seriously, is there anything that's happening now that you don't see in passages of the Bible? The question is, there's so many of them, I have to reread it. Like you keep quoting things that I've forgotten that are in there. How can you remember it all? But but every time you read it, you're like, yep. Oh, that's important. I need to really, But the four horsemen. But guess what? Everybody survived all that stuff, right? And as can we again. But one of the things that's very important in the Bible is maybe you can remember the actual scriptures, but is really avoiding cowardice and valuing courage. valuing courage, I mean, is so important. And just distancing yourself from cowardice is so vital, because cowardice is evil's best friend.
Well, and I've heard you say, I've loved this quote that you say, it's cowardice is the germ of treason. And so if you're a coward, I mean, you can commit treason like that.
It is. Treason comes naturally. And, a lot of people that are, consider themselves very smart, they'll try to disguise cowardice as high intelligence, right? When it's really not. They're like, well, I'm not going to do that because I'm just really a lot smarter than you guys. But a lot of times it's actually, no, you're just a coward. Because there's a lot of people that are quite brilliant that are actually very courageous. Look at Albert Einstein. He was relatively smart. Relativity. Okay, that was a little joke. But I used to love reading this stuff, man. Because but actually, there's a monument for Albert Einstein down in Panama City. They got a monument of his head. He was down there in Panama. And everybody who is somebody has been to Panama, pretty much. So you next. And but he had a lot of courage. Because courage has different faces. It's not always physical. Often it's like John Snow, the anesthetist in London in 1854 at the big cholera outbreak. He's the father of epidemiology, right? So there was cholera killing a bunch of people. Ended up killing over 600, but it really terrified people, and they didn't know what was causing it. And so he went off, and he's going to where everybody's dying, which is relatively dangerous. So, being an epidemiologist that's combat, brother, because you're going to where people are dying from something you don't know what's killing them. And he's knocking on their doors like, can I come in to where somebody just died this morning? And he's just doing that door after door. That's straight up courage, right? But then when it came down to, he thought it was the water was actually somehow what was killing people was coming through the water. And they're like, that's straight up basically crazy. And so they were impugning his character and his judgment, and just basically thought he was crazy. So that took a different type of courage. So you had to have the physical courage to go where that thing is, in cave after cave after cave, where people just died that morning and kept coming out alive somehow. And then like more than 600 people died, right? That was a lot of walking, because he was walking and going on his horse. And finally, when he's like, it's coming from the Broad Street pump, right? And so that's what he said, because he made a map, right? They call it, and there's a book about it called The Ghost Map, which I read. So finally, because he was a doctor for the royal family, he had a lot of political clout, right? Luckily. And so with that, he used that political clout to say, well, we should at least remove the pump handle from the Broad Street pump. And they did it. And the cholera went, shoop, it stopped, right? And they're like, whoa, maybe that crazy guy was right. And only like 20 years later, the crazy Cuban in Cuba, Carlos Finlay, was saying that mosquitoes were the vector for malaria. And that was because they thought it was caused by miasma, the same thing that they thought was causing cholera in 1854. Up in 1871, the crazy Cuban turned out to be not crazy, just like the crazy Londoner, John Snow, who ended up being the father of epidemiology. Now the crazy Cuban's doing epidemiology too, and he's right too. So he ends up being a hero because he earned it, right? That's courage. First of all, if you're going to where everybody's dying of malaria and stuff, and you're like, you know what I mean? It's like where they're dying of cholera. That's straight up hardcore courage, right? And then you have to hold your scientific ground. That's another layer of courage. This isn't combat. It's a different type, two different types of warfare, right? And so we have to have as many different types of courage as we can develop. Not just physical, but moral courage, right? Those guys had moral courage, right? And scientific courage, because if they were wrong, it'd be ruined for life. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah, but that's the guy that said it was water, but it turned out to be something else, you know? Or that was the crazy Cuban that said it was mosquitoes, and it was, you know? And so now he's a hero, and he earned it.
Well, Michael, I know you've lived under many of these extreme physical and emotional conditions. And so what disciplines or practices have really helped your spirit, soul, and body stay strong and really in alignment? Because I know it has to be tough.
Well, sooner or later, we're going to finish the finish line, and you're going to go to the gate, and that's it. And when I go to the gate, I want everybody to know there that let me in. You know what I mean?
Well done, good and faithful servant.
That's right. When you weren't watching, I was doing my job. When you were watching, I was doing my job. You know what I mean? So here I am, reporting for another duty. That's it. It's pretty simple.
Well, just a minute ago we were talking about courage. Why do people lack courage, like in the beginning? Why do people not have courage, and why do they lack it? And how do you gain courage?
I don't know. That's something people have thought about they were thinking about that in the Bible, right? I mean, what causes it? If anybody would know, it would have been somebody that wrote the Bible. I've thought about it a lot, and other people have as well. It's something that's been a subject of huge amounts of debate, and some people have courage in one thing but not in another. I've seen people that I know who had incredible courage in combat, like Eric Carilla. He's the CENTCOM commander of the war right now. He's the U.S. commander running the war. I did 5 months of combat with him, this close, as close as me to you. I was with him, right? I was with him when he got shot. I was with him when he shot people. I was with him a lot, right? He was an incredible commander, very courageous, very smart. And then when it came to the death jab, he crumbled, and he was pushing the death jab. And he did it very hard, right? And now he's pushing to go into a war against Iran that could destroy Israel and a lot of other people and even our own country. And I don't know where you come up with this. I don't know how you reconcile. I don't see courage in that.
So sticking to the topic of being courageous, Joshua 1:9 says, "Have I not commanded you to be strong and be courageous? And do not be terrified or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." So that being courageous is directly out of the Bible.
It is. It's very important. I was mentioning earlier, we were going into this battle called Arrowhead Ripper in Iraq. It was in Bakuba, Iraq in 2007. And I found a prayer card. That was the one that said, "Be not afraid." So I wrote a dispatch that I couldn't publish before the battle. I published it right after it started. And because I expected we were going to take a lot of casualties going in. The enemy was quite well prepared. And so, I wasn't afraid going into the battle, and I was ready to go. But I just happened to find that prayer card. I think they were handing out those prayer cards before that battle quite a lot because, we all expected we were going to take, a lot of people blown to shreds and shot down, but we went in there and we got them. We did take a few casualties, but we were lucky. I think being not afraid helped us. I was just there with a camera, so I wasn't actually fighting. So I was just there, taking pictures. But I think the high courage of that unit, that will reduce your number of casualties, actually, because it allows you to think more clearly. Like if you're courageous, you're able to think more clearly. So be not afraid is very, very important.
Well, going a little back on how to build courage, I think from that verse, if God is on your side and if you're really grounded in the Word and you're meditating on the Word and fellowshipping with the Father, then as you grow in Christ, then courage will come naturally because He will gift you that discernment, wisdom, and courage, and it will come as you build your relationship with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the more that you're in tune with the Spirit, the more your courage will grow, along with your discernment, your wisdom, and all else. Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will fall in line.
And tell yourself when you're going to bed at night, when you close your eyes, I will be courageous. Not will I be courageous. I will be courageous. You just tell yourself that. You say your prayers at night, I will be courageous. And that's just between you and you, right? And you and God, basically. You don't say it out loud or anybody else. Say, when you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning, I'll be courageous. You've seen me. I get up in the morning and I go right to the first battle. It's and that's just the way it is, year after year after year. And we have won a lot of battles that you never actually see in public, and we continue to do so, getting better and better at it.
So, what gave you courage? I know you were young going into the Green Berets, and later you were a war correspondent. What gave you courage, like going into the military at such a young age?
I think just people being around me that were encouraging. You know, even though I had problems with my father for a while, other people, my grandparents, coaches, and in the church I went to, and that sort of thing, they were just a good ecosystem of people, if you want to call it ecosystem. Is that the right word? I think it's close enough.
Good.
We understand. So I was lucky, you know. And that environment too was very deeply American, right? And in pro-military. At one point, a helicopter landed on our football field when I was in high school. I mean, we weren't even playing; we were in class. You know, just like a Huey helicopter came and landed, like randomly landed. We were like, what? Okay, that's not something you see every day. So we left class. We go out there, and the rotors have stopped, and the pilots are out walking around, like basically recruiting for the Army. You know, and I was like, I'll go. I'll go put my books in my locker. I'll take off with you right now. You know, they're like, no, you can't quite do it that quickly. You know, but we were very pro-military, you know, and so when I went into the Army, I was very happy to do it.
Yeah.
So you've made a life of adventure with a clear mission. What does meaningful adventure look like when it's driven by truth, not thrill?
Yeah, I don't do it for thrill. I mean, it's, as you can, a lot of people said that I was a war junkie or whatever, or an adrenaline addict or whatever, but I didn't even go to the Iraq War until it was on for 3 years or something, right? I mean, the war started in March 2023, right, or 2003, and I didn't go to it until December 2004. I only went to it because 2 friends got killed. That's why I went to it, and I didn't trust the media, and so I went to it for those reasons. And I thought we were starting to lose the war. And then I went. And I wanted to know what was going on. And what I found out there is the media is the way the media is. It's just a propaganda piece. You know, a lot of people say, I remember when media was honest and that sort of thing. And yeah, to which you already know, you don't ever remember when media was honest. You may remember when you thought it was honest. That's it. It's like, you know, you can't, the Broad Street pump, you know, where the cholera was coming out and the cholera outbreak in 1854 in London, that's a good metaphor for media, right? So if that pump is pumping out cholera, and by the way, when you drink water with cholera in it, you die often from dehydration. So along the way, you'll drink more water. There's a catch-22, or Murphy's Law. And but unfortunately, too, that water was some of the best tasting water in London. Now that was also a Murphy's Law. So it's like 2. So one is people would come far to get that water because it tasted very good, and then then you know, when you get cholera, you get dehydrated, you drink more water, and it's the same with our media. Right? It's like you want to know more. You don't understand what's happening. You keep drinking from the same source. You keep drinking from Fox or, you know, CNN or whatever, and thinking I can tell the difference between what's a truth and what's a lie. It's like going to that Broad Street pump and knowing, okay, this time when I pumped it, it was clean water, and this time that's dirty. Okay, it's clean again. Or, you know, I can somehow tell it apart. You know, it's like you can't. The best thing to do is just turn it off. To really turn it off, and because, you know, that's like Wikipedia is like, you know, and this new AI engines that people are constantly going, let me ask what Grok thinks. You know what I mean? Grok, are you kidding me? That's Wikipedia actually on a rocket ship. You know what I mean? It's like, and so people are using this to ask, you know, did such and such really just happen yesterday? I mean, if anybody thinks that that's not completely captured by the people that capture media, it's just a mistake. And so, yeah, discernment.
Discernment. That's really good. Again, another very, very powerful segment. 3 segments, all of which very powerful information. Again, I hope all of the listeners will really take heed of what you're saying. And so as we finish out this 3rd segment, if you could leave all our listeners with one charge to live boldly, clean from all drugs, alcohol, and righteously in today's world, what would that piece of advice be, or charge? What would that charge be?
Like right out of the Bible, be not afraid, for starters. And you're never alone. You never walk alone, right? And so everything that you're thinking or feeling, somebody else is too, right? It's not like I've had 2 different people in the last 48 hours who will both see this, who have both told me that they're feeling intensely lonely and afraid, right? And I'm like, don't worry. There's other people that feel like that, but you got to get over it. It's not. Don't feel like that. And basically, when you're talking with people, I don't offer much sympathy. I'm not a good sympathy guy. You know what I mean? I'm more like, let's find a way to. I'm not going to say, yeah, this fire's hot. Yeah, it's hot for me too. The fire's hot. I'm like, where's the door? How are we going to get out of this thing? Oh, the door's locked. Give me a hatchet. You know what I mean? And so, go with God, and first, and be not afraid. Go with God, and you never walk alone. And we don't have time to be weak. It's time to. Everybody can do something to make yourself stronger and make your friends and family stronger.
Well, I think that not only applies just to being depressed and being on intoxicants, but heartbreak too. There's a lot of people that have experienced a lot of heartbreak, and they feel alone or whatever. They're not good enough, and so just like what you're saying, when you rely on God for that, and He comes in and fills your life, then that He will fill that place. And like you said too, we don't have time to sit around and feel sorry for ourselves. We need to hit the road and start working, because we don't have time to waste time.
You know what? I was talking with somebody recently, a writer actually, and this person was having some heartbreak. She was having some heartbreak. I said, you know what? You're a writer. And this is, remember, you can either wallow in this and be in pain, or you can remember that you're a writer. Remember how you feel. So now you're developing the skills that you need to be able to write. Because you're never going to be a good writer if you don't experience these things. But when you start to look at it like that, from a distance, objectively, like, how do I feel? Yeah, that's terrible. But then you start to feel not as bad. It doesn't hurt as much. You know what I mean? You start feeling like, yeah, that, if you feel angry or sad or lonely or whatever. And then you start to try to step out of that and look, why do I feel like that? How does it feel? How would I describe that in writing? You can actually mitigate it. It's like a medicine, right? I mean, that's kind of a way of writing your way out of it. And that's what I said to her. I was like, you can just think about it. You're a writer. Look at this as a gift from God right there. You feel terrible right now. And so, it's sort of a brainwashing, right? And I was saying that. It's sort of brainwash yourself to not feel so badly. I mean, it's not bad that you feel bad. It just means you're human. That's all. And we all can feel like that. Nobody worth their salt you'll never be a good writer unless you've experienced a wide gamut of human emotions, right? Like everything. And the more intensely that you've felt them, the more serious you can be as a writer. So don't think that it's some kind of curse. The curse can be a blessing. You just have to take that lemon and make lemonade. What does the Bible say about that? I mean, take the curse and make it a blessing.
Yep.
But our evil enemies want to take blessings and make them curses, and we can't let them do that. And we're not going to let them do that. And we know their game now.
And I think, just final thought, I mean, as you're talking about experiencing those emotions, I think it's good to experience those emotions, but not wallow in those emotions. You want to experience it for a short amount of time, whether it's heartbreak, grief, whatever, and then hold it at an arm's length away. Don't let it consume you, because if you let it consume you, then that obviously will tear you down in many ways. But you just have to keep those emotions at bay and just, like you said, realize, wow, yeah, this is affecting me, and write down, like you said. those emotions.
You know, one
good.
thing that's important too, I know you got to go, but one more thing, you know, when it comes to that idea, you know, when it comes to be careful when people try to assign your emotions to you. You should feel like, or don't keep it bottled up, or he's bottling it all up and then he's going to explode. Where does it come from that I have to bottle anything up? I'm not keeping it bottled up. Like, it can be, actually, I took that feeling and I threw it in the river and it floated away. That's the way Thais look at it, right? Thais look at it like every year they have a Komloi balloon festival, right? And a lot of Chinese do this too. I think it's very wise. So they take these balloons, these incredible paper balloons are really cool, and they light the, you've seen the lanterns, the candle lanterns, and all their sorrows go away. They're not like keeping them bottled up. They're like, there's all those terrible things that happened this year, like, you know, things that bad happened in their family or something. They have to, we all know we have to keep going, right? And then they'll also release candle lanterns on the river, right? And so, as opposed to, I'm going to keep it bottled up and one day I'm going to explode. No, that's somebody assigning that to you. And if you look at it like that, that's the way you might feel. But you should look at it, I like the way that the Thais look at it. Just let it go. You have to let it go. And when I tell you what, when it came to stress and stuff, I've been in a lot of fighting with Thais, like with a lot of casualties, like 3,000 between 2010 and 2014 in their coups, like a couple hundred dead and about 3,000 wounded, and they just can instantly get over stress. They're like you know, everything's really, really bad, and then they can just suddenly just like snap themselves out of it. I told you about Thais and fireworks. If they're lighting fireworks and the Thais are running away, you should seek to keep up because it's about to be dangerous.
Yeah, I think harnessing that harnessing that ability to control your emotions will greatly improve your life. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, lack that skill, and it's costing them.
Yeah, you've got to ride your emotions like a horse instead of letting them ride you like a monkey on your back.
That's right.
Well, awesome. I love all this. To close us out, I'm going to say a prayer. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, I come to you, Lord, and I just thank you for Michael, and I thank you for the truth that he brings to the world and brings to us believers. And I just pray for all the listeners out there that whatever situations they are in, that they will just be courageous and strong, and that whoever's around them, if they are dealing with intoxicants or not, that they will just be a light, and that other people will see them and they will just want what they have, and what they have is you, Father. And I just pray that as we sit here at this table, that we just bring the truth that you want people to hear, Lord. We just ask that the listeners will just be Holy Spirit inspired and they will be in tuned with the Spirit. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Blaine. Thank you, Michael.
Thank
Been a
y'all.
pleasure.
Yes, thanks.
Thank y'all.